So now people feel like crap. So how do we turn this thing around? Well, we don't know, but let's zero in on why they're locking their wallets. Look at 1982. Personal savings rate was 11.2%. Anybody know why the personal savings rate was 11.2% in 1982? Think about that for a second. It was the high interest rates. That's when you had the 14% long bond. And people said, you know, if inflation is 13%, I know I'm losing money, but I don't want to be in the stock market. Some people did go into real estate during that time frame. But then remember we said the 80s and the 90s was super? Look at what our savings rate was up into 2007, below 1%. 2008, fourth quarter, 3%. 2009, first quarter, 4.1. 2009, second quarter, 5.0. We're savings again. And as Tom Woods just said, the savings really is delayed consumption. But we could use some consumption right now. Otherwise, maybe we'll have negative GDP. So look at this. From August of 2000 until April of 2001, the personal savings rate was actually negative in our country. People fell in love with real estate. Okay, now what do we know about consumers, which are 70% of our GDP? We do know that they're concerned. It's just a quick little survey from the Pew Institute. 21% of the people surveyed have at least one member who lost a job. 80% have cut back on out-of-pocket spending. 28 claim they're doing more work around the house. And this little asterisk is probably the most important. Hard to quantify, but a goodly number claim to be planting vegetable gardens. So we're starting to see people saying, how can I cut back? Is it coupons? Do I plant tomatoes? What do I really do? All right, so it's going to be a challenge to get people to unlock their wallets. We're in a situation now where you have the nice-to-haves and the must-haves. Forget about the nice-to-haves. People are trying to reduce the cost of the must-haves right now. The foreclosure crisis hits them every day. And, I mean, this is really the challenge because we can talk about stocks and bonds, but the biggest asset most people have is really their house. 24% of owner-occupied single-family homes have mortgage debt that exceeds the value of the home. I mean, people are walking away with the keys and dropping them off at the bank, right? 16 million homeowners are upside down on mortgages. 16 million. About 5% of homeowners have mortgage debt equal to 150% of the value of the home. And 13 million home foreclosures could occur within 5 years. So I would say, I agree with Tom Woods that the government really knows how to screw it up, and I also understand that politics trumps economics. But they really have to get to the point, if they want consumers to open those wallets, we've got to do a better job on this huge inventory of housing that's out there. Okay, now, fear alters people's priorities, right? And here, if you were given $1,000, what would you do with it? And this is just 5 answers. 48% would put it in savings. 27% would pay off a credit card debt. Put it in children's education, 12% claimed. Use it for health care expenses, said 10%, and 3% said they put it toward a vacation. If you took this same survey 18 months ago, it'd be topsy-turvy. So we know we've scared our population, and that is really a challenge. Okay, we also know we have a population that's not really highly educated when it comes to finances. And this is the one that knocks my socks off here. So emotion and intuition can trump logic. We kind of know that. Time spent reviewing your 401k. 72% of the people polled said less than 5 minutes. 27% said between 5 and 10 minutes. So basically, 99% of the people say no more than 10 minutes. So they really don't know what they own. Once the stock market started to really collapse, people were not even opening their monthly statements. So you know how terribly frightened they are. And they did this survey, very important, because here's where our spenders are. Household incomes between $50,000 and $125,000. So we really got to do something to make people feel a little bit better. This just goes back to the 5th grade, when your 5th grade teacher said, if you want to know how long it takes for something to double, you know, take your growth rate and divide it into 7.2. So our nation, since 1926, anybody know this? It's a did you know, useless, but it's a good one. You know, what has been the compound annual growth rate in our real GDP since 1926? Now, the reason why we picked 1926 is because it comes from Ibbotson Associates, and they're probably the best statisticians, but it takes into consideration deflation, inflation, and disinflation. Okay, so what we were saying here now is, roughly speaking, when you went through the 80s and 90s, that was a great period of wealth creation. And up until the early 2000s, we were growing at about 3.8%, I think it was, 3.4 to 3.8. Now we're in negative territory. So how long does it take to get back to our average of roughly about 3.1, 3.2? I would have to say it could take anywhere from 2 years to 10 years. So we're in a different type of environment. There's no question about that. My point here is most economists measure living standards by GDP. So if our GDP goes to 4%, one generation to double your living standards. If it goes to 1%, it takes 3 generations. And we really don't have enough prison cells to see our GDP grow at 1%. In my group in Washington, what we look at is the decline in GDP and what are the changes in human behavior, okay? So an awful lot of politicians are very frightened about this. I mean, it's ridiculous that for every 1 female behind bars, there's 10 men. And that's only going to grow if we see our standards of living down to 1 to 2%. Okay, but there are some positive things going on. Remember I said most people have a tendency to predict the present. And before we get into some of these other trends here, interest rates are the lowest in decades. The after-tax cost of capital is very attractive. And you adjust that for inflation, you know, it's incredible. So I think we're going to see a surge in fixed income investment when the all clear sign starts to show up. And that could come about with joint ventures with foreign sources, and that could come out of the Pittsburgh meeting. Second thing here, third thing, money supply has expanded rapidly for some time, so we don't like where it went. I don't feel like as a taxpayer I should own Citicorp, you know, but I do think that money had to be sent out at that point in time, and I do think that we're going to see probably at a faster pace banks paying back the TARP and things like that, okay? We are also going to see the infrastructure starting to pick up. I mean, somebody asked me, did President Obama declare war on poverty, on prosperity? And I said, yeah, I really don't know, but I think I know who his constituency is, so you can see why he wanted infrastructure, and we've only spent about 10 or 15% of that money. So just around next election year time, you're going to see a lot of roads getting tarred. You're going to see some buildings being built, more prisons, more hospitals, and so on and so forth. That wouldn't be my incentive. I'd be more inclined to say, what about accelerated depreciation? What about investment tax credit? What about things that get people to make investment? But that's his constituency. All right, the crude oil down to $80 a barrel from 147. It's down over $80 a barrel. I guess it's about 72 today. 90.6% of the workforce is on the job, but it's a little bit less when we put this slide together. Combined global stimulus packages over $1.8 trillion. That's equal to like the GDP of Spain. There's a lot of money coming. And one thing we do forget, we have very, very good companies in our countries, and we have an awful lot of people that have been using this time to get themselves in shape. Why is it that General Electric is the oldest company in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, was put together in 1896? That answer is very simple. During recessions, they either buy or bury their competition. Okay, so we may be going into a period where our largest capitalization companies may be better investments than debt and may be good long-term investments. I'll show you just a statistic here in a second. Stock market today is about where it was in 9/11. If you go from 2000 to 2008, we have negative return. We have a return that's actually lower than 1929 to 1930 to 1939. Mind-boggling. All right, now let's start talking about our consumer-driven economy and where these changes are going to come from. Well, 36% of female workers in their 20s have a college degree. 23% of male workers in their 20s have a college degree. So if you go into a college today, you're seeing more females than males. If you look at our country at age 25 or older, okay, what percent of our adult population age 25 or older has a college degree? Anybody know? College degree or higher? 25 and over, so you're on the job. It's 29%. Very good, very good. Anybody know what percent of our population in 1950 had a college degree?